think that bar fight.
Christina, are you ready for?
Yes, 1, 5.
Good evening. I would like to call this Planning Commission hearing for the evening of March 11th, 2021. And I'd like to begin this evening with the Pledge of Allegiance. And we can either look at the flag behind Christina or we can call one up.
We have it here, right here.
Okay.
Okay. There we go.
Very good. Together, I pledge
Pledge
allegiance
allegiance
To the
to the
flag
flag
the
of
United
of the
States,
United
States
States
of
of America,
to the
and
republic
to
for
the
Republic
republic
which it
for
stands,
which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
liberty,
liberty and justice for
Justice.
all.
Very good. Thank you. I'm going to probably bumble this a little bit, but I know we need to talk or we need to mention the public's ability to tap into our Planning Commission hearing this evening. So I'm hoping all those that are interested have made contact with State Hall or are connected with us.
Excuse me, Chair Felder,
Yes.
we need to do a roll call.
Oh, my goodness sakes. I didn't see this on my list. Oh, okay. Please do a good roll call.
Commissioner Barbos.
Uh-oh.
Commissioner Barbos.
Here.
Commissioner Bohar.
Present.
Commissioner Felder.
Here.
Commissioner O'Neill.
here,
Commissioner McDonald is
Okay.
absent. Excuse me. Excuse me. Commissioner McDonald.
I'm here.
Vice Chair Barnett.
Present.
And Chair Willander.
Here.
All present.
Very good. Now, at this time, we'd like to open it up to the public to share on items that are not appearing on the agenda. And with the preface by saying that we will be good listeners on anything that's stated, but we will not be able to act on anything. Do we see anyone in the wings, Christina?
Yes, Kelso Barnett would like to speak.
Please invite him in.
Sure.
Am I?
Oh,
Hear me?
Yes.
yes, welcome.
Thank you, Chair Wellander and the Planning Commission. I was just thinking a year ago, I walked into the Planning Commission and all the seats were spaced out and I had no idea what was going on. And that was literally our March meeting a year ago. And obviously a lot has happened in the past year and a lot has happened in the past month. And I'm no longer on the Planning Commission. And so I just wanted to call in and say how much I'm going to miss all of you on the Planning Commission. And hopefully it won't be too long. And, you know, if it all works out, maybe I'll be back soon. But, you know, this obviously was all the reason why I applied to be on the city council was because I realized the Commissioner Larry Barnett and Commissioner Kelso Barnett was very awkward. And so obviously that would no longer exist on the Planning Commission. And I'm very excited about the year that's coming up. Obviously, our mayor has agendized housing issues on our next city council meeting, and housing issues and the development code update are going to be a really significant part of our city council agenda for the next year. And we're obviously going to be doing that in collaboration with the Planning Commission. And that makes me excited that I will still be able to work with all of you, hopefully very closely. So I just wanted to call in and say, I never really got to say goodbye. And so this is what I'm doing. And I will see everyone around town.
Very good. Thank you, Kelso.
Welcome. All right.
Okay,
We have no other public comment.
no other public comment. Very good. At this time, I'd like my fellow commissioners to review the agenda, and if there are any suggestions for changes, please speak up. If not, we will proceed as written.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I was absent for the February 11th meeting. How can I absent myself from that?
Director Storer, could you comment on that, please? Because I can't.
As far as not being able to vote on the minutes? Here, you'd recuse.
Jim, is that your concern, Jim? Not being able to vote on the minutes?
On the minutes?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Yes,
I don't want to vote on the February 11th meeting. I was absent.
correct. No problem. Just,
Just say abstain.
okay,
Yes, dang.
Abstain.
okay,
We're not voting yet.
okay.
Oh,
Any other comments regarding our agenda order? As I had mentioned before we went online, is that on items number 8.1, there will be three of us that'll be recusing ourselves, two because of proximity, one because of involvement on the project. And so Chair Emeritus Felder will be taking the lead on 8.1, and we will be not participating. Having said that, Christina, do we have any late correspondence?
No late correspondence, no.
Okay, moving quickly on to the consent calendar, we have two items, 2 minutes from the hearings of January 14th and February 11th, as well as a request for an extension of use permit. Do we have anyone that wishes to pull anything off the consent calendar?
Like you're watching TV, like you're.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Bohar would need to pull the item so he can abstain from one of those meetings.
Earbuds in your ears.
Okay, so he missed the February 11th, so we'll be pulling the meeting draft minutes for February 11th, 2021.
And you could take a motion for the balance of the consent calendar.
And let's see, I guess Commissioner McDonald, did you say you'll have to abstain as well?
No, I was present and voting on
Okay.
the February meeting.
I misunderstood, so no problem. So at this point, we do need to vote on the consent calendar with the one item being pulled. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
The balance of the consent calendar.
And
Commissioner Barbos,
Commissioner McDonald, did you say you'll have to abstain?
Commissioner Bohar. Oh, abstaining. Excuse,
Oh, not on.
No, this is the motion for everything but the meeting that he has to abstain from.
okay,
On
I'll start over. Commissioner Barbos, Commissioner Bohar,
Move to approve.
Commissioner,
Mr. Chair, if we can we just suspend the meeting for a moment?
I'm sorry. Wait a second,
Commissioner-
something's going on.
Aye.
What's with the background? I'm out.
Abstain.
Oh, we're right, I'm sorry, abstain.
No, there's some
Commissioner
background.
Bohar.
What's going
Commissioner
on?
Bohar is having some feedback, so I keep muting him, but then he'll have to unmute himself when he wants to speak.
Okay,
So, Mr.
So,
Chair, if we could
yes.
just start, I'll make a recommendation here. Wendy, if you can mute Commissioner Bohar for a moment, please. The commission can take it. We got a motion in a second to adopt consent, which would approve the item and then the one set of minutes. Let's take a roll call vote on that because Commissioner Bohar.
I'm sorry, abstain. No, there's some.
Commissioner
Hooked up to
Barbo.
it. Before that, though, we're still getting that feedback. I think maybe Kelso's still hooked up.
So, Mr.
It's
Chair,
just-
if we could just start.
No, it's Jim Bohar's computer.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. I vote yes.
Commissioner Bohar.
No, Christina,
No,
he doesn't.
excuse me. Okay. Commissioner Barbos. Commissioner Felder.
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill.
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald.
Yes.
Vice Chair Burnett.
Yes.
And Chair Willander.
Yes,
The motion passes 6-0 with one abstention.
and now do we bring back the minutes of February 11th?
Yes.
And do I have a vote?
Bring that back for a vote and then Commissioner Bohar can vote on that. Excuse me, not vote on that.
Not for that. Okay, so do I have a motion for?
I need to make a slight correction on it, please.
Okay, please.
Item 8.1, item number 3. They erroneously called me out as chair where I would like to have said I passed the hat to Chair Willander. So please correct that in the minutes.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, with that one correction, do I have a motion for acceptance?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Barbos. Commissioner Felder.
Yes?
Commissioner O'Neill.
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald.
Yes.
Vice Chair Barnett.
Aye.
And Chair Willander.
Yes,
The motion carries 6-0 with one abstention.
great. I will sound like a broken record, but what we just experienced for the last 10 minutes is another great reason to get back to literal, not virtual, real planning commission hearings. So I'm hoping that things will change in the not too distant future. So having said that, I would like to we will move on to the public hearing portion of the agenda. And we'll be looking at item number 8.1. And as I mentioned, I will be recusing myself along with Commissioner Barbos and Vice Chair Barnett. So thank you, Mr. Felder.
Okay. Moving right along on item 8.1. It's an application of Chad Overway for demolition of existing 1,081 square foot single family residence, design review of a new 3,080 square foot single family residence, and a variance to the 20-foot garage setback standards for a project located at 420 Patton Street, including all the categorical exemptions. So with that, could I have a staff report from Wendy, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair Felder and Planning Commissioners. This project is located on Patton Street between 4th Street and 5th Street East. In January of this year, the Design Review and Historic Preservation Commission voted to recommend the Planning Commission approve the demolition of the existing structure and the design review of the new structure on the property. The property is currently developed with a single-family home and detached garage. It is located within the city's historic overlay zone It's not listed on the local historic resource survey, the state register, or the national register. However, any structure over 50 years old is subject to review and approval of a demolition permit by the Planning Commission. The project is surrounded by single-family residences. This is the site plan for the demolition.
Can I get this full screen?
Proposing to demolish the main house and the garage. These existing trees on the east elevation will remain. Last year, the owner commissioned ADP Preservation to prepare a historic resource inventory of the property to assess, there I got it right finally, the historic character of the property. The historic resource evaluation found that the property does not meet the criteria for listing on the California Register and therefore is not a historic resource as defined under CEQA.
That's just.
The city regulations for demolition permits rely heavily on the criteria for listing on the California Register of Historical Resources in determining whether a property is historically significant and can be demolished. If the Planning Commission determines that the residence does not qualify as a historic resource under CEQA and can make the findings, then the demolition may be approved by the Planning Commission. At the Design Review Commission meeting, the commission recommended that the buildings not be demolished until building permits for the replacement structure have been issued and that the inside and outside of the residence be photo documented and submitted to the city and the League of Historic Preservation. And this has been included as conditions of approval. With regard to the design review, the overall development plan is to construct a new 3,080 one-story square foot replacement residence, a new pool, driveway, trellis, and a walkway. For projects that are subject to both the Design Review and the Planning Commission, the Design Review Commission is responsible for reviewing the elevation details, colors and materials, landscape, lighting, and making a recommendation to the Planning Commission. With regard to zoning requirements, the proposal is consistent with all the zoning requirements except for the garage setback. And in this planning area, it states that garages shall be set back 20 feet from the front of the primary structure. And the proposed garage is not set back from the front of the residence, and a variance is required to be approved by this commission. The design of the new residence is intended to be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood and designed to employ a contemporary design style with a flat roof, smooth plaster finish, steel fascias, and aluminum window system. Rainier, fixed, and operable windows are proposed, and the front door frame is also manufactured by Rainiers and composed of aluminum and bronze material. The actual panel design has not been selected yet. However, the manufacturer information indicates a couple of different possibilities being considered by the applicant, and these are the different options. The roof material is proposed in the form of a PV roof system, PVC roofing and membrane material. And while building colors for a single-family residence aren't subject to design review, the applicant has indicated that the smooth plaster finish siding will be light gray, and the window and doors frames will be bronze. As I mentioned, the Planning Commission needs to approve a variance to the garage setback requirements. And there are a number of different findings this commission will have to make in order to approve the project: demolition findings, design review findings, and variance findings. And staff recommends the Planning Commission approve the demolition of the existing residence, the design review of the new residence, and the variance to the garage setback standards, subject to findings and conditions of approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Are there questions of staff? I don't see any hands raised. With that, we'll move on with the applicant. Is he present? Care to speak?
Yes, Chad Overway.
Chad, you're still muted.
Okay, I think I'm there.
Go ahead.
My name is Chad Overway, and I'm the architect for the project. I reside at 630 Austin Avenue. Good evening to all the commissioners. Thank you at this time for spending all your time on behalf of the town for all these matters that you folks discuss. My client, I think Joe and Angela and Stacia are on as well. And we'd be, of course, happy to discuss any matters that the commission might have. There's just a couple of points I wanted to address. The first is we tried to cover all the salient issues in the project narrative. However, there might need some clarifications and further explanations. So please feel free to ask me and I'll try to do the best. And we did not specifically ask for letters of support. However, many of the adjacent homeowners know me from the project completed across the street. They have voiced their support verbally to me and are excited about the proposed new home. The other small bit of history, if you don't know, I recently completed a home that's of a similar design at 630 Austin Avenue. It's actually turned out to be a nice contribution to Sonoma's architecture. And we seem to have a lot of people that walk by and love to take pictures and talk about it. And that's actually how I met my clients. And we're excited about building a new home for them in the Sonoma area that they can live in. And that's all I have for this.
Is that it?
That's it. I try to keep it short.
Are there questions of the applicant? Go ahead, Commissioner Bohar.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I have two questions. What are the panels in the garage door that are opposite the right side?
Yes, they would be a glass insert, and that would be of a satin finish or a sandblasted glass, so that you don't actually see into the garage.
I couldn't, in the rendering, it appears that they're some opaque, unglassed.
Yes, that indeed is correct. It is opaque. So it's a sandblasted or a satin glass that you cannot actually see through.
Does it more or less match the look from the street as the ones on the right?
More or less.
Okay.
You know, there will be some reflections, you know, off of it. But the proposed glass on the opposite side, which is a window, would be clear glass versus a sandblasted or opaque glass.
Thank you. Just a comment on that. I think you've got a really interesting approach to giving the illusion of no garage there. It's a very good solution, I think.
Thank you.
Second question, is that your final landscaping plan with those low flowers in the front?
No, Mr. Wellender is working on the landscaping design for me. And so that's probably why he stepped out for this evening. He will be developing an entire landscape plan for the front yard and the backyards as well.
So the one we're looking at will be quite different or similar or what?
I don't know. I'd have to ask Ron. He hasn't come up with a plan.
That's fine.
But it's probably going to be somewhat similar, probably less of the flowers and more of probably much more of an eco-friendly landscaping.
Okay, thank you. That's fine.
Well, I have a question for Wendy. Does that come back to design review then for the landscaping plan?
If the landscaped area is greater than 2,500 square feet, it will need design review since it's in the historic overlay zone.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Sheila.
Okay. Chad, thanks for your presentation tonight. And I was reading your report and I wanted to ask a bit more about the plans for recycling or repurposing the existing structure. Can you tell us what you intend to do there?
Yes, well, there's actually two thoughts there. One is that there might be a possibility that we would offer the home for free to individuals that would like to have that home relocated for an ADU unit or reposition the house on a different piece of property. The house is in fairly good condition. So somebody would be able to take that house and lift it up and move it. That's one possibility. The other possibility is what we did here at 630 Austin Street was we were able to dismantle the building and recycle all the parts and pieces that were salvageable to local neighbors. Siding went to a variety of individuals and were repurposed. So that is, it's kind of a hands-on disassembly of the building, which takes a little bit longer, but we're trying very much to, to repurpose those pieces and not just throw them in the dump.
Wendy, do you recall any time in the last 10 years where we've had a building like that successfully moved?
There's been no applications to move a structure in the last 10 years.
And I love your modern design. I think your house on Austin is great. It is, even though ADP says it's not a historic structure, the neighborhood is made up of all of these historic structures, and I hate for that to just be lost. So that's just something that I'm thinking about and concerned about. It has nothing to do with your design, but how can we preserve the historic nature of the neighborhood and the structures that were there? Thank you.
Other questions of the applicant? Bob, do you have any?
No, I don't.
Okay, with that, then I will open the public hearing to the rest of the public. Is there anybody from the public cares to speak?
There's no one additional that's raising their hand to speak.
The owner, Joe Anastasi, would you care to speak on it?
Sure, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I showed my picture, but my son has penguins walking around behind me. I don't know how to get rid of that. So here I am with a blank screen. But the property is, it has this unusual dog leg aspect to the real estate. And it's always, I've owned a property for 15 years with my wife, and we finally came to the conclusion as to how to approach a remodel of it when we saw Chad's design and what he did on Austin, and we waited 2 years for Chad to become free and to approach it. And so but the property has these, the challenges there are these very tall redwood trees on the one side of the property, and then behind that is the dog leg, a very narrow dog leg of the property. And Chad has come up with a really, I thought, creative design to figure out how to remodel the property and take into consideration and preserve the redwood trees. And I think then it's the dog leg of the property, which is the limitation on another part of the approach. And I think he came up with a plan that included the garage within the footprint of the properties per se, and that's why we need to come for the variance. And I'm amenable to selling the house for nothing to somebody who wants to lift it up and take it away. That would be, we'd be amenable to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there's no one else from the public that cares to speak,
No more.
Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for further discussion, possible resolution. Anyone want to start?
I'll start.
Go ahead, Commissioner Bohar.
I like the design. While it's not a traditional design, I think that I like the idea of the modern juxtaposed with the older buildings in the area. I think it's tastefully done. In some ways, that the horizontal nature of it kind of gives a suggestion of some of those mid-50s buildings, not historic, certainly. And I do have, I would be concerned that the lot is being underutilized now, and I think this really adds to the housing stock by exploiting that lot more than it is right now. Although I do agree with Commissioner O'Neill's comments that it's too bad that house has to go. I just wonder whether it could be marketed in some way that somebody could carry it off and put it in their backyard as an ADU or something. But that's nothing we're going to address tonight. But I like the project, and I think I could support it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll comment. Is that okay?
Sure. Go ahead, Commissioner O'Neill.
Okay. The design is very interesting. I like that. I like the modern style. I am deeply saddened by what's happening in that neighborhood, though. I think what a perfect example is what happened with the Kennard property on 3rd Street East. And ADP never seems to find any property historic. So that does give me concern. I do think that the overall nature of the neighborhood is historic. And if you pick off one property at a time because that property is not deemed historic, and eventually you've picked off all the properties, you completely change the culture of that neighborhood. So that happened with the Kennard property. ADP said it wasn't historic. That property is now completely destroyed. A big giant mansion put in its place. This property is another example of one that's going to get picked off. And actually this one pretty much fits the development code. So there's not a lot here of wiggle room, but it does bother me that we're just destroying the historic nature of that neighborhood. So I'm actually on the fence about how I'm going to consider this one. I do think that taking each of these individual properties is necessary because each individual owners, but I do have an overall question for staff as to what do we do about this whole neighborhood that's getting picked and picked and picked and picked? And how are we going to protect the overall historic nature of that area when all of these individual properties are getting torn down and replaced? So that's my comment. I don't know which way I'm going to vote on this. I do wonder whether it could have been designed to maintain the existing structure and enhance it. And certainly that existing structure is small for today's lifestyle, but tripling it in size also seems like not necessary. So I'll listen to the other commissioners and then make a decision. Thank you.
Planning Director, do you have any comment about having from Commissioner O'Neill about having the neighborhoods picked off one by one? Are there any plans to protect that a little bit?
Well, that's the downside of a zoning or development code. They get to be prescriptive in nature, like a setback or things like that. In Sonoma's case, there have been attempts to try to help preserve, if you will, the character of certain areas, and that's why we have, I think, a dozen or so planning areas within the city where standards within each of those areas are different. And Wendy can tell you what those are: the northeast, the central. Like I said, there's almost a dozen of them. And without having design guidelines specific to saying thou shalt preserve, then you're starting to get into the subjective nature, which is clearly the mandate of within the purview of you as a commissioner to exercise how you would view that. So Wendy, could you just talk for a moment about the specific planning area that this project is in and some of those characteristics? Because it's incumbent upon the commission to say what those standards, review those standards and then judge a project according to it. You have to exercise that. Wendy?
Sure. So I'm just looking up the Central East area guidelines as we speak here. So in that chapter, it talks about building design. It talks about the height and profile, the building types. It talks about the guidelines for residential structures and how they should be placed on the site. So the most narrow dimension of the structure is parallel to the dimensions of the parcel. But the design guidelines don't go into too much specifics about what you shall do. Is that what you were looking for, David?
Yes, that's good. And so as a result of having that kind of language, the commission can say, I'm making a finding that it's not consistent or compatible with the surrounding neighborhood and therefore is inconsistent with the goals of that particular planning area. And I don't know if Wendy, if you can show them on the zoning map, maybe doesn't show it so clearly. Can you show the map, Wendy?
Yeah.
Please. And I'll make a couple comments on that. And this is the tough part of zoning codes where you don't have a specific style saying thou shalt only build homes in this area with earth tone colors or heights. They've got to include buildings or structures have to include certain architectural features. Well, we don't have that. So that's not necessarily the map I was thinking of, Wendy.
Oh, did you want the site plan?
Just showing where this specific planning area is, so they can see, this commission can see where the specific area is, because they'll then get the context of the homes in that particular planning area.
So unfortunately, the planning area boundaries aren't showing up very well. It's a purple line. Here it is. And it goes up here and down here to include this Central East area.
Is it most of what we see there in yellow, Wendy?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure if that kind of addresses the question, but there you can see the context of the homes out there. And I know there's no one set familiar style of architecture, but certainly the commission can say that the proposal is inconsistent with the character of the neighborhood. Again, you're getting into a subjective area.
Can you also address the historic overlay and how that plays into this?
I'll let Wendy take that one too. She'll be able to show the district as well.
Sure. So it's just taking a moment to load. But the gray area that just showed up on the screen, so it's the boundary. So this property is just on the edge of the historic overlay zone.
And what does it mean, Wendy, if you can just answer the question about what does that mean to be in there versus out of there?
If you're in the historic overlay zone, then there's discretionary review when you're proposing to make exterior changes to the building or build a new residence.
I have a question for Wendy as it relates to the overlay zone. I recall in the past 20 years that we expanded the overlay zone in that area to include additional parcels. Is this property in that expanded overlay zone that I'm kind of recalling?
Yeah, I think it was. I think when we expanded it, I believe it was in around 2009. The boundary was a little bit narrow.
Yeah, I recall that, and I also recall specific discussions about the reason for expanding that too, because we, as a commission at that time, in the Design Review Commission, particularly was concerned about the demolition of post-World War II housing, and how that was an important aspect of expanding the district. I just wanted to bring that up. So,
I have a question, Wendy. When the only reason that this is before the Planning Commission is that there's a variance required, is that correct?
Correct.
Because there is a property just down the street on the opposite side that there was a demolition and a rebuild, but it was heard only by the Design Review Commission, if I understand. So the only reason that it's here is because we have a variance on the garage.
Correct.
But at the same time, Mr. Standing In Chair, that whoever you are, Bob, your commission tonight could choose to not make the findings for the variance.
Right.
Alternatively, you can make the findings for the variance, but still not approve the changes because you do have the discretion and a recommendation from the DRHPC.
I guess my only point was we probably wouldn't have even heard this one if the garage didn't need a variance.
That is correct, sir. Yes.
Okay. Commissioner McDonald, do you have any further comments?
no, do you want me to speak of my thoughts of the project now?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, I wanted to first say that as it relates to the variance, I probably would not support the variance for this garage, except for the fact that the redwood trees are a significant part of the property. And so the preservation of those trees, in my mind, outweighs the garage. The design solution for the garage creates glass panels. I'm not a fan of the glass panels. They're reflective, but at least they're not, a wooden door or something like that. So the glass panels, in some respects, kind of disguises that. I'm not keen on the idea of demolishing post-World War II housing. I think that it is in itself is a historic part of Sonoma. It's when Sonoma first started changing, and it has a place, a time place. So it's sad to see these houses go and be pulled out. And I would prefer the components of those post-World War II housing. If you take a look at the house, the garage is detached and set back. There's a front porch. The house is it's an inviting home. You've got a front door. You can see this is a much more modern house. It is. It's not that it's not inviting. It's just it's a little bit more sterile, and I think it's contrasts from the homes in the area. If this was a two-story home and was I probably would have a much more difficult time with the design. But I'm leaning more towards supporting the variance because I think that the trees are much more important in the way that the garage is designed. It at least doesn't appear that it's a separate element. Now the driveway is a different situation, and I would ask that we could look at a landscape solution because we have that in our purview to look at something other than a solid concrete driveway, and to break that up and to look at different elements. So I would hope that if we're going to approve this variance, that we try to come up with a landscape plan that minimizes the driveway. And so that's kind of where I am. When, like you were mentioning, Commissioner Felder, this wouldn't even come before us if it wasn't for the variance. So this would have already been approved. And I guess that this is the design aesthetic, and maybe this is the future for Sonoma, and this is what houses are going to look like for families and people. That's their aesthetic. It's not the aesthetic of a bygone era of what Sonoma used to be. I'm kind of saddened by that, but other people have different ideas of what is tasteful. So,
Mr. Felder, if I could just give an option out there for consideration as you receive other comment. One could, because of the nature of the landscaping question that Commissioner McDonald raised, one could give the applicant a continuance to have them look at that very specific issue and return with a landscape plan, because again, as Commissioner McDonald said, that is within your purview rather than bouncing it to staff. Staff would actually have a difficult time trying to implement what Commissioner McDonald is intending unless there's some very specific things that we get down to, and that would be almost down to the design review level. So that's just something to think about. It may not be what your commission chooses to do tonight, but certainly that's another option available.
Thank you. I agree with Commissioner McDonald on the fact that saving the redwood trees is an overriding factor that would lead me to probably go for a variance on the garage. And while I'm indeed don't like to see the character of the neighborhood change dramatically, it is a fact that it's happening within that immediate area anyway. And it's really, as long as it's tastefully done, I guess I'm willing to accept a design solution that's different than what all of the previous buildings look like. But so I'm inclined to support this project. But I do like the suggestion of the planning director, and especially since there was another comment about the landscape plan that I would be in favor of continuing it to get a specific landscape plan in place that we could then act on rather than just speculate on how it might be done.
Commissioner Felder. Sorry, I keep getting mixed up with the chair and the vice chair. So what you might want to do is open up the public hearing and ask the applicant if they'd be willing to do that. In some cases, in my experience, there are some applicants that would prefer to have a decision made rather than kicking the can down the road. So it would be worthwhile to hear from the applicant, assuming this is the collective direction of the commission. Give them that option at some point if you want to.
Let me ask a question of Commissioner McDonald. Do you feel very strongly about the driveway to ask for a continuance to get a design solution?
Well, we have a person that will be taking care of that, that we might trust. And I think that I'd like to add it as a specific condition that the driveway not necessarily be all concrete or asphalt, and that there's a landscaping component that breaks it up. And I'm okay with that. I just don't want to see a big gigantic concrete driveway taking up the front, where right now we've got this small skinny little garage in the back, and so I like to have the redwood trees and a minimal driveway.
Yeah. All right. I mean, I could be amenable to that solution, to just condition it to try to come up with an alternate design for the driveway.
So, Mr. Chair, I would just like everyone to know that the Public Works Department requires 20 feet of concrete from the back of sidewalk, 10 feet wide for driveway. So just keep that in mind.
Oh, you're right. So they require, they don't allow the concrete strips with the grass in between anymore, like all these other subdivisions have been built like in the past.
They do, but 20 feet back.
So that would go to the question of allowing for an alternate design to be submitted, so staff can then vet it with Public Works to see if that's something that they could support.
Right.
And then we get into a question of, could that require a variance to the development code? I'm not sure.
But am I hearing that you can have a median strip on the driveway that's non-concrete?
That's not the latest direction that I've heard from Public Works. They're requiring solid concrete material 20 feet back from the sidewalk.
What's the reason for that?
To avoid debris on the road and to ensure that the public utilities under the sidewalk in the driveway are protected.
Are there utilities under that driveway?
I don't know.
Do they allow variances does the city engineer allow variances?
Well,
I recall having to put that in my driveway too. Like I had to build a gigantic concrete driveway I didn't want to put in. And I remember that now. So
let me just make a comment.
I had to take a decomposed granite driveway that was taking in all of my drainage, and I didn't have to have a drainage system. They made me put a concrete driveway in, and I actually had to put a sump pump in because I had a concrete driveway.
Well, just to be clear, the Public Works Department doesn't have purview over private land. They do over public lands. And so that's why I was suggesting that maybe we come back and defer to a redesign. But certainly you could have a condition that says, where's the effect of something like prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant should submit a driveway plan that integrates a different design to the satisfaction of the planning director and the public works director, something of that nature that helps break the mass of the concrete. You could be that specific. And then we can, and if for some reason we can't come to a point, then we'll return. But you can certainly take action with a condition like that tonight.
Yeah, I guess I'm inclined to put a condition on it rather than continuing the item.
Mr. Chair, like I said, you could also ask the applicant. They may have already thought of this issue.
Yeah, let me reopen the public hearing. And Joe, would you like to comment on this, or is Chad available yet?
This is Joe. I can't tell if Chad is still in the meeting.
Yeah, he's on the screen now.
Okay, maybe Chad, would you go first?
Chad, you're muted. There we go. You're still muted, Chad.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. I'm glad this has actually come up because it's been a sensitive subject. And combined with the codes of the Public Works Department and also with the Green Building Council and with the requirements of the building code, they're requiring somewhere close to 20 to 25% of your hard surfaces to be permeable. So we've been looking into the application of trying to make the driveway a permeable surface so that it helps retain the water on site, takes away the harshness of you actually driving into a hard surface concrete driveway. And that also actually really helps the whole overall intent of taking away the essence of that there's a driveway there, so that on both sides of the facility you have landscaping on one side with your picture window, and then the garage door with a lawn or some other kind of permeable surface, grass, something. I don't know if we need to be that overly specific, but that would definitely take away and address the issue so that you're not just having, for lack of a better term, a big hunk of concrete sitting in your driveway.
So I'm hearing you say, excuse me, so I'm hearing you say that you're certainly amenable to coming up with a driveway design that would satisfy this commission.
Yeah, in fact, I have pulled up the plans that I plan on submitting to the building department. And it is already defined there as a full permeable surface in accordance with the Green Building Council.
All right. Commissioner McDonald, are you on board with this then?
Yes, I am. I think that we'll be able to work. I think that there's a support from the architect, and we have a landscape plan prepared. I feel comfortable conditioning this. I think anything other than just a solid concrete driveway is going to be a better solution, and I'm just trying to move in that direction.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, I'm very much a eco-centric architect. As you know, the building is completely made out of 90% recyclable materials. And so the overall thought process, even considering the design, was to try to do our very best to recognize and be respectful of all the situations that we need to address when we build a new home.
Mm-hmm. And the landscape solution would also be the use of, like you were saying, permeable pavers or decorative pavers that are unique and don't necessarily scream out concrete.
Yeah, that's
or even scored colored concrete and design.
Yeah, I think the concrete is a nice idea if you're washing your car, you know, in the driveway. But again, not very many people do that any longer. So I think the idea of having something much more greener and much more eco-friendly is just something that we need to do nowadays. I mean, I just think that's a commitment to the community as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. So unless, Joe, unless you have a further comment, I'm going to reclose the public hearing again.
All right, thank you.
So we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. Commissioner McDonald, you want to take a stab at making a motion for the project, including a resolution, and then adding that condition of approval?
Yeah, so I make a motion that we approve I guess what we're doing is we're approving the demolition of the structure, of the existing structure. And I recommend that we approve the variance, which allows for a garage within the 20-foot area with an added condition to mitigate that, on that a landscape plan be developed to address breaking the driveway up and softening it so it's not solid concrete. And I guess the last thing would be a resolution approval for the findings for that variance, and also the findings for the design review, that the house is compatible with the neighborhood because it's, for example, a one-story element and has unique features that will accent the neighborhood.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I have a second from Commissioner Bohar. Did you want to say something, Planning Director?
Yes, if it's okay with the motion and the second to have that plan be presented to the city prior to the issuance of a building permit.
Okay, you agree with that, Commissioner?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
So that's part of the motion and second.
Commissioner-
And if there's no further discussion, we will
Commissioner-
call for a roll call vote. Thank you, Christina.
Sure. Commissioner Bohar,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Neill,
No.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Chair Felder.
Yes.
The motion passes 3-1.
Can I make a comment now that the motion's passed?
Yes.
Is that appropriate? I really wholeheartedly feel very similar to Commissioner O'Neill with respect to this issue of taking each one of these houses one by one and demolishing them with structures twice the size. And I think what we should do as a commission is support looking at these individual neighborhood areas that are in the historic overlay and look at the contributing factors that these buildings that remain create. And I know that we have the ability to create parameters and guidelines that would, in essence, make it much more difficult for this to happen. And if we could talk about that at a separate time, I'd be more than happy to lead that discussion. I consider the building that we just, it's a contributor to the overall district. And what we need to do is come up with the language to be able to define what the contributing factors of a building like that are. And so, Sheila, I want you to know that although I voted for this building, I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying. And I think we just need to take the next steps to do that.
Thanks.
A
I
few comments
appreciate that.
on that line.
I think we all think the same thing.
There's a leveling effect on so many buildings in a neighborhood being sold to have the buildings demolished and have them built on. This particular property, I'm guessing, is being sold for land value because the land value exceeds the cost of selling it with that building on there. That's not the case in a great many of the buildings in that neighborhood who are larger, very fine historic buildings, because no builder or developer is going to buy a building where he can't afford to have it pencil out at a market price by demolishing the building and just paying whatever the market price is for the building and the land, unless the land's worth more. And there are a few, I don't know how many there are, but likely there are some lots with very small buildings where that land exceeds the cost of buying the building and the house and assessing it to market value. So you can't just willy-nilly go in and buy one of those and demolish them because some of them are worth several millions of dollars. You can't afford to buy it, demolish a $3 million building and put up another one. So those are market forces which affect that.
Yeah, Mr. Commissioner Felder, we need to be careful about speaking about matters that are not on the agenda.
Yeah.
Now that we have.
Can you say that a little louder, please? I can't hear very well.
He's telling you not to speak about matters that are not on the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's not just Commissioner Bowmore, by the way. I'm not picking on him. But
no, the comment was made that people are concerned about the neighborhood being picked over and developed.
I was allowing for some brevity as a conclusory comment on an item rather than having a discussion. And that's what.
Well, we are at the point where this has been acted on and this item is over with.
But Mr. Chair, I'd like to now break that rule and say to the commissioners, you have the opportunity to change your zoning code in the near future. So that would be one, I think, noted by those that are serving on the Development Code Ad Hoc Committee. Thank you, Mr. Felder.
Okay. With that, I will return the gavel to Commissioner Willander.
Very good. Thank you for pitching for me. Moving on then to the only other item that we have on this evening's agenda is 8.2. And this is a condition of approval correction. And at this point, I'd like to have a staff report, please.
Sure, thank you, Chair Willander. So last month, the Planning Commission approved a two-lot subdivision at 241 5th Street West. And after the Planning Commission meeting, the applicant was discussing with staff the total park in lieu fees for the project. And at the meeting last month, they were calculated at $43,882.85. And the applicant brought up the fact that perhaps staff should have included the sale price of the subject property into the calculations that were made. And so we talked amongst staff and decided, yes, that was a good idea. And so that brought the total park in lieu fees down to $40,082.87. And so we'd like the Planning Commission to approve that change to the conditions. Thank you.
Very good. Director Storer, do we need to have the applicant speak, or is this something we can deal with in-house?
You can actually open up the public hearing and they can choose to speak during that. And if not, you can open it up to the rest of the public as well. And if you hear no comments from anybody, you can move forward.
Okay. Does anybody on the commission have questions for the staff? Seeing no movement, is the applicant present and wish to speak?
Chair Willander, that applicant is not present.
Thank you. If there is anybody in the public that wishes to speak to this item, please make yourself known. Seeing no motion, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion and possible action.
I make a motion that we approve the revised conditions and approval and findings.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Barbos,
Yes.
Commissioner Bohar,
Yes.
Commissioner Felder,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Vice Chair Barnett,
Aye.
and Chair Willander.
Yes.
The motion is unanimously approved.
Very good. Let's then move right on into items for discussion. Do we have any? Including the director. Any items?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I actually have 7. So I know, we'll stretch this meeting out somehow. So as Councilmember Barnett mentioned, the City Council on Monday, if you're interested, would like to discuss item 6.2. I'd recommend that you look at that. Mr. Chair, I wasn't sure if you were going to mention that, so I'll go ahead and do that if you're okay with that. Thank you. So the mayor has asked for the City Council to discuss a series of housing actions or projects or issues, if you will. So again, that's item 6.2 on the agenda this next Monday night. You can certainly see that on the link on the city's website. There's, I think, about a half a dozen issues, some of which are underway with the City Council Ad Hoc Development Code Zoning Code Update Committee. And that committee, by the way, has been meeting, as you're all aware, and that also leads into another item on the agenda, which is on consent, and that would be the second reading, if you will, or the adoption of the ordinance to amend the development code that talks about coverage, site coverage. The third thing on the agenda Monday night that may be of interest to you coming from our department is an ordinance that would have regulations requiring the banning of polystyrene products and wares in the city. Travis of our staff has prepared that ordinance. This week we sent out, I believe it was yesterday or today, we sent out an RFP for consultants to assist staff in our housing element update, more specifically to help Wendy. And we're coming up on a future city council agenda, as you'll see in the newspaper tomorrow in the legal ads, that we will be discussing at the city council an ordinance related to the second commercial storefront cannabis dispensary business. So again, that's April the 5th. And last but not least, we have received word from LAFCO's executive officer that he will be commissioning what is called a municipal services review, an MSR. Each city is to have one of these updated every 5 years. The city of Sonoma has done it in 2006, or had one done for it by LAFCO in 2006. And so I appreciate the executive officer commencing that study, at least at our staff's behest anyway. And that will help. If you're not familiar with what an MSR is, one night at a commission meeting, we can talk about some of those things as they relate to the actual product that will be prepared. The executive officer has told me that it will take somewhere between 4 and 6 months. And this is a document that will inform LAFCO and also the city about our infrastructure, our land use planning kind of tools, and the provision of government services to our community. Mr. Chair, that concludes my comments.
Thank you very much, but don't go too far from that microphone because we'd like to get an issues update.
Oh, what one?
issues update on anything?
Oh, no, that was it.
That was it?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. So no update on any outstanding projects that are of interest to us? Everything's
Perfect.
Okay, fine. All right.
Actually, if it's of interest to you, we are in the process of reviewing new legislation that we have coming forward. There's a series of litigation being picked up from 2019 that didn't go through the legislature. There was very little activity in the legislature last year relating to land use and development, and we can report on that as we get through that process as the issues go through the legislature, through the committees right now. And we'll be happy to report on that at a future point.
Very good. Thank you. So moving on to comments from the commission. Yes, Mr. Feldman.
I would like to, since I see Kelso still here, I would like to thank Kelso for his service on the Planning Commission. He was a valuable asset to this commission, and we will miss him greatly, but I'm looking forward to great things for him to accomplish on the city council. So I wish him well in his new endeavor.
Is there a second? I'm just
I will particularly miss that when he laughs, he snorts.
We'll try to keep the jokes coming at the council.
Yes, very good. Thank you, Bob. Anyone else like to speak up?
I have a question for staff. I'm sorry.
Sure, go right ahead.
I'm wondering what role the Planning Commission or City Council can have with regards to the Amazon Distribution Center. It's in the county on Fremont Drive and 8th Street East, and that's getting bounced back and forth. And I'm wondering, it's not certainly within our city limits, but it's really going to have a significant direct impact on the residents. And I'm wondering what, if any, involvement we can have as a governing party of Sonoma.
What I can do is just answer very briefly. Since I've been here for the last 2.5 years, one of the first things I did was become quite amazed that we knew nothing of what was going on in the county. And most cities in the state not only have their city limits, their sphere of influence, some may have an urban growth boundary or an urban limit line, whatever you want to call it. But almost all of them also have what's called an area of concern. That's a much broader area. And we actually don't have one of those created for the city of Sonoma. And so I contacted the county planning department because I was concerned that there were projects going on all around our borders without us knowing about them. And that was clearly the case. We have been receiving notification of hearings where we're asked to provide comments as a staff on projects. On this one, we did not receive it for whatever reason, but we can certainly send letters, talk to our supervisor, but we don't have really a vote at the table in this case. So at this point, I can report back to your commission on how we might do this in the future for other projects.
Is it possible for us to have a discussion put on the agenda where we can at least have the public have an opportunity to make comments and council or the commissioners to make comments?
Well, I think we can, but it's to what point? I mean, the issue here is trying to influence the decision of the decision makers at Sonoma County. We could have a discussion on night sky ordinances, but what does it matter unless we actually adopt an ordinance within Sonoma about that issue? This particular issue, Commissioner O'Neill, is something that boat has already left the harbor, so to speak.
Well, wouldn't that be on the Citizens Advisory Commission agenda at some point?
It has been in the past.
It has been in the past, yes.
But it's not done. It's ongoing. And that's where I'm wondering if there's something proactive that we could be doing.
We could certainly talk as a management to their management about concerns of the commission. We could also have the city council address it as well, perhaps. And I can talk with the city manager about that.
Okay.
Can I also ask a question? And interject, because that project should have had some sort of environmental review. So my question to you is, do you have an agreement? I used to work for a county and I used to work for a city. When I worked for the county, we would have a project and we would have to send our environmental review to be commented on by the city that abutted the development, or with a sphere of influence or adjoining. So I guess my question is, do we send our environmental review documents to the county, and does the county send theirs to us?
The answer is no, but they are required to send them, as you know, to the state clearinghouse. We are not a responsible agency. We're not a lead agency on their projects, and there is no obligation on the law to do that. As a matter of courtesy, they should, and that's what the planning director there has afforded us in referring projects to us in and around our city boundaries. But on this one, we did not receive it.
Yeah, because I think that's the critical thing, because that project has significant unavoidable impacts with respect to traffic and also with our housing problems. So
let me recommend this, Mr. Chair, if that's possible. I'll report back at the next meeting as to the environmental status. I think Commissioner McDonald's interested in that. Certainly to look at if they've conducted an initial study to determine what the process will be as far as a mitigated neg deck or an EIR. And I can certainly weigh in with the city manager as to any position that the city would like to take. And maybe it's such that that would be a letter from the mayor, but certainly we'd have to go from this commission to the city council in order to do that. But I'll learn about that process and how we do it, address it.
Okay.
Certainly I can report back at the next meeting.
Steve, please go ahead.
I just wondered if others had noticed a couple of recent developments in Sacramento and Berkeley. Sacramento has taken the position that single-family residential zoning is no longer going to be limited to the building of one house, and they're going to allow up to 4 houses. That's citywide. And the city of Berkeley is, they may have already done it, but it's coming before their city council this week, I've read in the Chronicle. So I just, you remember Scott Wiener had a bill last year in the state legislature, which pretty much was on similar lines, and I'm just wondering where all this is going. And the other thing is my other comment is I find it a little disheartening that this city attitude toward pervious paving is such that driveways have to be concrete. I know I've seen a lot of people put in these driveways of interlocking pavers that are pervious, and that's the point of it, to get the water into the ground. And I sincerely hope that that is actually not, in fact, an ironclad requirement of the city, because if it is, I think it needs to be changed.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I could address 2 things Commissioner Barbeau mentioned. I'll be having a conversation with Wendy about that to understand it better. This is news to me because I'm unaware of a public works department that gets to be able to, exact their standards or implement their standards on private property, understanding the implication of how private development could impact public property like the curb, gutter, and sidewalk. I understand that, but I'll probably get educated on that in the next couple of days. The second thing, Mr. Chair, you and I spoke this afternoon about a pending piece of legislation that's of concern to the League of California Cities, SB 9. Would you like to address that, or would you like me to mention it, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, please continue.
Yeah, what I'd like to do, if that's okay, if that's the direction, what I think I'm hearing is not only will I report back on the item previously but mentioned, but there's a pending bill that's going through the committee right now that does exactly what Commissioner Barbeau mentioned, not in the city or county of Sacramento, but it's a bill by Atkins, not this one, in our presence, but that regulates, will allow for the subdivision of land, assuming that you have enough real estate in the yellow part of the zoning map that Wendy was showing you, just as an example. So if you have sufficient area of land that you would be able to subdivide that property ministerially and then place not only the existing single family home being there, but you could then put another single family home on that property and then an ADU ultimately, which could actually mean 3 units on the parcel that's not got a home on it. And then the new lot that you just created could also have another 3 homes on it. Now, I don't know what Berkeley's doing, but I can certainly check into that and report back along with SB 9.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else would like to contribute this evening?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Barnett.
Two items. First of all, with regard to the Amazon facility and a public opportunity, my experience is and was that a topic like that is best added to the city council agenda, in which there's no rule that says the city can't agendize an item on a matter of concern to the city that is taking place adjacent to it in the county. When I was on the council and there was the proposal for the Boys and Girls Club in Maxwell Park, I placed that on the council agenda. At that point in time, it didn't require agreement from other council members for a member of the council to put something on the agenda. So it was a little easier back then to agendize items. But nonetheless, I believe the proper venue for that kind of discussion is the council rather than the planning commission. And it is possible to do it. The second item I wanted to mention is that after consulting with Chair Wellender, who had been in communication with the mayor, I was pleased to join the subcommittee, the Development Code Subcommittee, as a participant, as vice chair, much as Chair Wellender had participated as vice chair when Commissioner Felder was chair. And so I'll be going to my first meeting tomorrow on that. And I look forward to participating in that process. It's what I really wanted to do most of all when I applied to the Planning Commission, knowing that the Development Code and the General Plan were up for revision. And so I'm pleased to have the opportunity to get more involved in that.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else? Well, I do want to make one comment. And although I was not part of agenda item number 8.1, I did kind of hear some of the discussion at the end regarding concern about the change in the community fabric. And I would like very much to agendize that topic at some point, because I think it's worthy of a discussion, because at least in the eyes of this commissioner, I think that's what kind of makes Sonoma special, this kind of diverse fabric that spans a pretty broad period of architectural design, and I think would be worthy of discussion. So I am throwing it out there at some future date. And I'm not hearing a rebuttal from the director. Is that feasible, Mr. Storr?
Well, clearly, I think the proper venue would be in the Development Code ad hoc. Could be brought up tomorrow or at some point. If you recall, we're trying to do the low-hanging fruit. And as we mentioned, we've done a few things already, and that could certainly be on the next list, on the next batch of things that we want to deal with. That's certainly up to that group.
Is that something, though, because it is certainly, I think, a broad shared concern? Could there be discussion with the whole commission? Because it seems like our ad hoc has a pretty good agenda going right now.
Well, yeah, what I'd suggest is that we get that off of our plate, move along, get those things done. We'll certainly get some direction as a staff on Monday night of some other items. And then perhaps the ad hoc could then suggest that we take on this issue. And then, as you recall, it goes from the ad hoc to the full planning commission and then on to council as a recommendation.
Very good.
Can I make a comment, please? I just wanted to let you know that another item of low-hanging fruit is residential driveways. So the ad hoc, I might want to bring that up as well.
Good. Okay. Okay. Anything else? Do I see interest in more comments? Do I see any interest in making a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, thank you. We need not talk about it. Let's just adjourn. Thank you very much. Good night.
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 Hi.
Bye.
Thank you.